What's up, people? Yu-Gi-Oh! Master 88 here, and welcome to the January 2020 Orichalcos Challenge deck profile. Before I get started, I just want to update you guys on the rules to the Orichalcos Challenge and what's been changed. Basically, very short to the point. There's only a few simple rules. First and foremost, the original rules to the Orichalcos Challenge, or to my Orichalcos, as follows. Basically, the Orichalcos Challenge is pretty much, it's pretty much like a secret boss, a secret boss in a video game, for example. It's pretty much, in my opinion, one of the most unique Yu-Gi-Oh! Challenges there is. Basically, how the challenge works is very simple. You face this right here, an Orichalcos deck, which is comprised of basically every card in here is custom made by me, and there's a whole bunch of cards here that a whole bunch of other custom cards that I've gotten from people and all that sort of stuff. Basically, I am the judge when it comes to the rulings of my own cards. I am the only one that can use custom cards. My opponent has to use a real deck, unfortunately. Also, it's advanced format. Everybody has to abide by the ban list. If you beat me while the Seal of Orichalcos is active, you get to release one of the souls that is on my soul list. Or, basically, you get to take somebody's name off of the soul list. If you lose while the Seal of Orichalcos is active, your name gets put on the soul list, and you can't challenge the Orichalcos deck again until your name is taken off. That's basically how it works. And also there is no burn or Exodia decks allowed in the Orichalcos Challenge, because that would be just too unfair. But that's the old rules. There has been a revision in the rules for my Orichalcos Challenge. One rule has changed. Basically, from this point forward, I will not be the only one that's allowed to use custom cards in the Orichalcos Challenge. The opponent, if the opponent has a custom deck or has custom cards, whichever, you will be allowed to use them against me in the Orichalcos Challenge. So basically, it's pretty much simple to the point. If you have a custom deck or some custom cards in general, feel free to use them against the Orichalcos. It's plain and simple. Basically, the reason why I wanted to change that rule, which is what other Orichalcos users have used over the years, is basically they were the only ones that can use custom cards and stuff, is I want to make my Orichalcos Challenge an even playing field. I don't want to be the only one to use custom cards anymore, so I changed that. So, all you duelists out there, if you decide to challenge my Orichalcos deck and you have a custom deck or custom cards, feel free to use them against me. I would very much appreciate it. But other than that, that is pretty much how the challenge works. So basically, another thing I want to acknowledge is I severely apologize for not keeping up on the updates to the Orichalcos Challenge. A lot of personal stuff has gone down in my life, a lot of health problems and stuff. If most of you have seen my last few videos, I've acknowledged that. But I'm doing a little better now, so the Orichalcos is coming back full blast. So basically, the Orichalcos Challenge, it's been around for so many years. It was basically the Orichalcos Challenge first form. Well, the origin of it it goes back to the side events of the World Championship back in 2004. That's pretty much what I gathered. And in 2012, Robbie Cole, aka Cole 40, he brought the challenge back. And he made it into his own. And he's done a really good job at it. Really good job. I think about a few months later, or maybe a year, I don't remember, Callan Florentine, he started the Orichalcos challenge for himself, and he's been doing a wonderful job. He's gotten a lot of souls for the Great Leviathan and all that. And also around 2012 is when I started the Orichalcos challenge as well. So some of us old Orichalcos users are still around, but we're starting to notice that there's a new generation of people who want to use the Orichalcos deck, and we're fine with that. If you want to use the Orichalcos, feel free to use it. Make your own cards, do whatever you want. But basically, the rules that I just mentioned, the only, like I said before, the only revision that's been changed is let's see. I got my rules up right now. I'm just trying to find where the line is that I need to change. And then we'll get to the deck profile. I'm so sorry, guys. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Basically, I see the line that I need to change. It will be changed within a couple days, because I'm going to be busy the next few days. But now I know what to change. I was just checking something. But yeah, all the other rules that I mentioned, oh! I forgot one other rule. No FTKs. So basically, the original rules for the Orichalcos Challenge was no FTKs, no match winners, no Exidia, no final countdown. But yeah, the rules basically are going to change with that. I don't think FTKs and match winners don't matter much to me anymore. So basically, it's going to be revised to no burn and no Exodia based decks. So no Exodia decks or no burn decks are allowed. Period, bang, that's it. So other than that, that's pretty much the rules of the Orichalcos Challenge, and that's a little bit of history behind it. So without further ado, I will basically get to the deck profile. So basically, first off, we got Orichalcos Shaman and Orichalcos Sorcerer. These two are pretty much the two headliners of my deck. And basically, their effects are pretty much simple to the point. Basically, when Shaman is normal summoned, I can special summon one level 4 or lower Orichalcos monster from my hand or deck. I can target up to 3 cards with different names in my graveyard, shuffle them into the deck, and then I draw 2 cards. I can change this card's level from 1 to 8. I can only control one Orichalcos Shaman on the field. I can only use each effect of Orichalcos Shaman once per turn and only once that turn. So he has a hard once per turn clause that cannot be overturned at all. Sorcerer here, which basically when you summon Shaman, you go into this guy anyway. And when this guy is special summoned by the effect of a level 4 or lower Orichalcos monster, I can special summon one level 4 or lower Orichalcos monster from my hand or deck. I can target one Synchro or Xyz monster in my graveyard and return it to the extra deck. I can change this card's level from 1 to 8. If this card is used for a Synchro or Xyz summon, I can add one Orichalcos card from my deck or graveyard to my hand. I can only control one Orichalcos Sorcerer on the field. You can only use each effect of Orichalcos Sorcerer once per turn and only once that turn. Also a once per turn clause. So basically they're pretty balanced. Basically, these two have had many revisions over the years. They used to be a lot more overpowered than they used to, but the final revision I did just last year, I decided to balance them out a little further. Next up, Orichalcos Fairy. This is one of my tuner monsters. Simple, dark level 1 fairy type. And if it's sent to the graveyard for the synchro summon of a dark attributed synchro monster, I gain 2,000 life points. And if I would take damage, I can discard this card from my hand to the graveyard. I take no damage this turn. So it's pretty much a Karibos, essentially, if I need to use that effect. But most of the time, I never even use it, so I may remove it at some point when I decide to reprint this. Next up, Darkness Seed. If any of you all has seen Yu-Gi-Oh! GX Season 4, it's an amazing card. I mean, when this thing is sent to the graveyard, I can activate its effect, and during my second standby phase after I've used this effect, I can revive it, and it'll have 2 special abilities. 1, it cannot be destroyed by battle. 2, during my end phase, if my life points are below 4,000, they go back to 4,000. So it essentially solves one of the areas that the Orichalcos deck has always had trouble with: gaining life points. Life points is essential in Yu-Gi-Oh! No matter what deck or archetype you run, you need to assure that you have life points. Otherwise, you ain't going to get very far. Next up, Orichalcos Priestess. This is pretty much another headliner in my deck. 1,500 attack, 1,500 defense. During each of my standby phases, I gain 500 life points for each other monster I control. Once per turn, and only once that turn, I can pay 1,000 life points to special summon 1 level 4 lower Orichalcos monster from my graveyard. However, that monster's effects are negated, and I can only control 1 Orichalcos Priestess on the field. So essentially, she's a resurrector for my graveyard. That's pretty much it. Now, the next few monsters, I'm not going to really explain them. You pretty much know who these guys are by now. I will at least explain Orichalcos Kutora, though, because my version of Kutora is different from Robbie Cole and Callum Florentine's. Basically, how my version of Kutora works is I can pay 500 life points to special summon it. And basically, all battle and effect damage to me drops to 0. This works for both. And when it's sent from the field to the graveyard, I can summon Orichalcos Shuneros from my hand, deck, or graveyard. So this thing, compared to the original Kutora, which only blocks battle damage, this one's a bit more powerful because, number one, even though burn decks and Exodia decks aren't allowed, I did not say that burn cards themselves were not allowed. If a card effect does burn damage, that's okay. So basically, a burn card is allowed, but a burn deck isn't. I'm just trying to differentiate between the two. So, next up, Orichalcos Shuneros, Dexia, Aristeros, and Divine Serpent. Basically, none of them has really changed. Basically, Dexia's attack points is always 300 points higher than the monster it's battling. Aristeros' defense points is always 300 points higher than the monster it's battling. Shuneros, it gobbles up any attack points that Kutora absorbed as battle damage or effect damage. Divine Serpent. When this thing is summoned, my life points drop down to 0 and I get rid of my entire hand. But as long as he's on the field, I remain in the game, meaning I can survive through any win condition. And if you're wondering about this version of Shuneros, it is just a teeny bit different. When this thing leaves the field, period, this thing comes out. So that's how it works. So next up, Gygas. So basically, the idea of Gygas here is that every time he's blown up, he just comes back 500 points stronger. But if I use this effect on my opponent's turn, I have to skip my next draw phase. So that's pretty much the difference between him. Next up, and I know what you're thinking by looking at that picture, is that, yep, Jinzo has been turned into an Orichalcos monster. So his new name is Orichalcos Searcher. And he essentially does basically what his name suggests. When this card is sent when this card is sent to the graveyard, I can add 2 Orichalcos cards from my deck to my hand. So I can get more cards this way. Next up, Ricky the Fifth Swordsman. If you guys have seen my past Orichalcos Challenge deck profiles, which I encourage you to watch them, I'm not going to explain this monster because he's been pretty much one of the main monsters in my deck for several years. So if you all want to know what he does, you'll have to look at my past versions of the Orichalcos deck. Next up, Singularity Fiend. Basically, it's pretty much my little answer to Special Summon. When the opponent special summons a monster, I dump this guy and a spell card from my hand to the graveyard to negate and destroy the special summon. That's how he works. He's from Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, by the way. Next up, Dark Orichalcos Knight and Orichalcos Knight. Basically, the Brothers of Destruction for my deck. Basically, when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, I can pay 500 life points to add 1 Orichalcos card from my graveyard to my hand. That's Orichalcos Knight. Dark Orichalcos Knight is, when this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, I can pay 500 life points to banish it. During the end phase of the turn I activated this card, I can shuffle 1 Orichalcos card in my graveyard back into my deck, and if I do, I draw 1 card. So, banishment and draw power, lethal combination. Lord of the Orichalcos Army. This card was used a long time ago in most of the revisions of my Orichalcos deck, primarily the 2012 version, which, if you look on my channel, I have a deck called Special Deck Profile. That was the very first Orichalcos deck profile that I've ever done, and that was back in 2012. This guy was one of the headliners of that deck. Basically, he negates any trap card that targets him, and not only that, during my draw phase, I can add 1 Orichalcos monster from my deck to my hand instead of conducting my normal draw phase. So basically, I get to search more cards. Next up, Traveler of the Orichalcos. And what this does is, when this card is normal summoned, I can special summon 1 level 4 lower Orichalcos monster from my hand or deck, but its effects are negated, and it cannot be used as synchro material. You can discard this card from your hand to add 1 Orichalcos card from your deck to your hand. So that's how that works. Next up, Orichalcos Magician Girl. So what Orichalcos Magician Girl does is, if I can only control 1 face-up Orichalcos Magician Girl. If I control the Seal of Orichalcos, you can special summon this card from your hand. This card gains 300 attack for every Orichalcos monster in either player's graveyard. Once per turn, you can discard 1 card, then add 1 Orichalcos card from your deck to your hand. So, more searching power plus a beat stick. Now, these cards here, these last 3 are the secret weapons I chose to up the difficulty of the Orichalcos deck. Because I was talking to my buddy Count Florentine, which I'll link his channel and Robbie Cole's in the description bar below. I was talking to Callan, and then I brought up an idea. Why don't I up the difficulty of the Orichalcos challenge for myself? And he was okay with it. So, basically, I did just that. These 3 cards in my hand are the secret weapons that are going to make this deck, that are going to make the last revision of my deck look like a joke. I am not kidding. So first up, out of these 3, is a monster called Paranoid Jar. And all 3 of these cards are made by my friend Winter Moon. Shout out to Winter Moon. And basically, he is Dark Level 1 Fiend. He's a flip effect monster, just like the other Jar family members. And here's what his flip effects are. Each player discards 2 cards, then draw 2 cards. Set or special summon 1 level 2 or lower monster from your deck or extract in a main monster zone. Then treat this special summon as its proper summon. Destroy this card and 1 other card on the field. So you have a special summon, a draw power, and a scrap dragon effect. Really lethal for a level 1 monster. Next up, Dark Tribute Dissenter. Basically, here's what he does. You can discard this card, special summon 3 Dark Tribute tokens, Fiend Dark level 2, 300 attack, 500 defense. These tokens cannot be treated except for the tributes for the summon of a level 7 or higher monster, or the activation of trap cards that can be special summoned as a monster. During the end phase, if this card was sent to the graveyard this turn, you can add this card to your hand. But its effects are negated in the hand or negated until the end phase after this card resolves. So I pretty much discard him, get tokens, and then proceed to go shenanigans. That's pretty much how I use it. Next up, out of the 3 cards I revealed to you all, this one is the most dangerous. Hollow's Spirit Headless Soul. This thing is a monster. 2000 attack, 1200 defense, Fiend level 5 Earth. You can special summon this card from your hand or graveyard by discarding 1 monster. This card gains 100 attack for each monster in the graveyard. Once per turn, you can make all monsters you control become level 5 until the end phase. You contribute 1 monster, accept a token, reveal 1 level 10 monster in your hand or deck, except a divine monster, excavate it if revealed from the deck, special summon it, ignoring its summoning conditions. You can only use this effect of Hollow's Spirit Headless Soul once per turn. Now the idea for that effect that I just mentioned, I summon this thing, then I use him to pretty much get this out. You got it. I can use him to bring out Shunoros early. And that's going to make the Orichalcos deck's difficulty a bit better, because I can use him, get Shunoros out, find a way to detonate him, and get Divine Serpent a few turns early. That's pretty much how the difficulty spike happens. But that's the difficulty spike for the monsters. The difficulty increase for the spells is a bit different. Excuse me 1 minute, I have to get a drink of water. I can't finish the deck profile without basically getting my voice all hurt and stuff. And by the way, people, I'm sorry if you hear something in the background. A family member is watching TV in there. I have no control over that. I apologize for the inconvenience. Okay. Spell cards. Triple Seal of Orichalcos. Plus Dutros, plus Tritos. I'm not going to explain any one of these because basically they've worked like they always have. But the Seal of Orichalcos here, my friend Winter Moon, we revised the UDE effect a little bit, make it more modernized and a lot more sense. It's still the same effect. There is no change. The Seal of Orichalcos is still a spell speed 4. So, if you all want to know what its UDE effect says, feel free to look it up. So basically, these are the main 5 spells that the Orichalcos runs off of. So if you've seen other Orichalcos challenges, you pretty much know what they do now. I'm not going to explain them because of time restraints. Next up, 2 Chosen Destiny. I can pay 1,000 life points to either add 1 Orichalcos card from my deck to my hand, or I can destroy one, ignoring its effects will prevent it being destroyed. So basically, the whole idea behind this is, say my life points are low, and I know I'm going to add it to my own soul wall. Bang! Pay 1,000, blow up my own seal. Next up, Orichalcos Gateway. Once per turn, I can activate one of the following effects. I can either pay 500 life points to shuffle one Orichalcos card from my hand or graveyard back into my deck, then I draw one card. 2, I can pay 1,000 life points to add one Orichalcos card from my deck or graveyard to my hand. So it's basically Orichalcos Side, but I have an added benefit to it. Next up, 2 copies of Orichalcos Transfer Draw. I can shuffle one Orichalcos, Mirror Knight Calling, or Divine Serpent monster from my hand back into my deck, then draw 2 cards. This is basically Pot of Greed for me. Next up, Orichalcos Destroyer. The only back row removal in my deck. Pay 1,000, blow up every card my opponent controls. Next up, Grave Arm. I destroy one monster on the field, and as long as that monster's in the graveyard, it cannot be special summoned at all. Now, the difficulty increase for the spell cards. These free cards that I'm revealing to you guys were also made by Winter Moon. Shoutouts to you, buddy, once again. The first card I'm revealing is the spell card known as Reality Shatter Summoning. Target any number of monsters in your hand. Special summon them, and if you do, send one card from the top of your deck for each monster special summoned by this effect. So this is a quick play soul charge, basically, for my Orichalcos deck. Since I only have one other resurrection card in the deck that's not that good. Next up, here we go. Grimoire of Curses. Now, here's how this thing works. The equipped monster cannot be destroyed, and yes, it's an equipped spell. If a card effect is activated that would target the equipped monster, you can negate the activation and inflict 1,000 damage to the player who activated that card. If the equipped monster leaves the field, take 2,000 damage. So say, for example, you activate a card effect that targets a monster while equipped with the Grimoire. You'll take 1,000 damage plus your effects negated. You blow this thing up, I take 2,000 damage. Next up, the most broken spell card in my deck. Grimoire of Transconfiguration. This thing is super busted. And I only run one copy of this. It's also an equipped spell card. The equipped monster gains 800 attack and 1,000 defense points. The equipped monster becomes a spellcaster. Once per turn, you can reveal one spell card in your hand. Then declare the name of a spell card. The revealed spell card's name and effects become the name and effects of the declared spell card's name until the end phase. If this card leaves the field, you can target a spellcaster in either player's graveyard and special summon it. Holy crap, that's broken. So basically, I'll demonstrate right now how this thing works. Let me grab a card over here. So say I have a Dark Hole in my hand. I activate Transconfiguration. I reveal Dark Hole. And then I reveal something along the lines of, we'll say Pot of Extravagance. Dark Hole becomes Pot of Extravagance by name and effects until the end phase. So basically, if it's still my main phase, boom, play Pot of Extravagance, banish 6, draw 2. Or, if I wanted to take it one step further than that, activate Transconfiguration, reveal Dark Hole, and then let's just say I go on ahead and reveal Sky Striker Widow Anchor, or Orchestrated Babel for some unknown reason. I can transform this Dark Hole into Orchestrated Babel or whatever I see fit. So basically, I can transform any spell card I reveal into any spell card's name I declare. And the Dark Hole will become that name and gain its effects. Basically, I can transform any spell card in my possession to a spell card I don't even own in real life if I wanted to. So that's how dangerously busted this thing is. So that's pretty much the spells. Next up, traps. And there's a few traps in here that I chose for secret weapons too. First, Briar's Transplant. I banished one card on the field, and it doesn't even target. Orichalcos Swords of Concealing. When this card is activated, I flip all monsters my opponent controls into face-down defense position. These positions cannot be changed for as long as it remains on the face-up on the field. During your main phase, you can choose to destroy this card. So basically, it's almost like Swords of Concealing Light, but it's better. Next up, Divine Gain. A card I developed specifically for Divine Serpent. And basically, here's why. This card is also treated as an Orichalcos card. You can only activate this card from your hand if the first effect of Divine Serpent is activated. That effect is negated and remains negated even if Divine Serpent leaves the field. This is a counter trap I developed specifically to mitigate Divine Serpent's effect when he's summoned. This way, I don't lose my life points and I don't lose my hand. This way, I can keep everything intact. Next up, Rebirth Tablet. Basically, I can only activate this if a monster of mine is blown up. I can just special summon another monster from my graveyard. That's it. So next up, the free secret weapons for the trap cards. Missing Page from the Dark Grimoire. These free traps are also made by my buddy Winter Moon. So basically, here's what this card does. Reveal one spell card in your hand. Then declare the name of a spell card. The revealed spell card's name and effects become the name and effects of the declared spell card's name until the end phase. It's basically just a trap version of Transconfiguration. It does the exact same thing. Next up, Angelic Thief. It's a counter trap. A really good counter trap. During your opponent's damage step, when a monster attacks, take control of it. Inflict damage equal to its original attack to your opponent. During either player's turn, except the turn this card was sent to the graveyard, your opponent can banish this card, and if they do, target that monster, they gain control of it, and if they do, you draw one card. So essentially, I activate this during your damage step. I take your monster, you take damage, but later on, you can banish this from my graveyard, get your monster back, but I get to draw a card. Next up, the final card in my deck, Reflection. Hold on. And here's what Reflection does. It's a continuous trap card, I'm sorry. I almost said spell card there. If an opponent's monster declares an attack, special in one Reflection token with the same level, type, attribute, attack, and defense as the target. And if you do, negate the attack. Once per turn during your end phase, if this card is in your graveyard, you can target one face-up Reflection token, gain life points equal to the target's attack points. So it's pretty much token generator and life points. It's simple as that. Next up, the extra deck. Link Karibo, Zeraboros, Beat Cop, and my ace Link monster, Firenet Link Master. Also made by Winter Moon. Next, so what he does is he's a link free, requires requires free effect monsters. Gains 500 attack for each monster it points to once per turn. If a monster this card points to would be targeted, you can change the target to this card and apply the effect or damage calculation. Also, this card is not destroyed. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target any number of cards in your graveyard, shuffle the targets into the deck, and gain 300 life points for each. So it's essentially my version of Michael. That's basically what it is. Next up, Alexandramore, Dragon of the Orichalcos. This thing is 2,500 attack, 4,000 defense. It requires 4 level 4s to make it. Once per duel, you can detach all overlay units from this card to destroy all cards on your opponent's side of the field. This card cannot attack unless you send the top 10 cards of your deck to the graveyard. So this thing is a detonator, and it's pretty much like Divine Serpent. Next up, Orichalcos and Tuneric. If you've seen Callum Florentine's past builds, he's used this on a few occasions. So I'm not going to explain its effects. Next up, my Ace Xyz monster, number 200, Orichalcos Soul Eater. Basically, it requires 2 level 5s in Orichalcos monsters in order to make it, which Shaman and Sorcerer have level modulation abilities in order to make this. So once per turn, I can detach 1 material from this card to target 1 monster my opponent controls, attach that target to this card as a material. This card gains 200 attack for each material attached to it. If this card would be destroyed, you can detach 1 material from this card instead. So that's number 200. Now for Dark Girgian X. Now I've used Dark Girgian X in most of my builds, but just recently he got a revision. And basically, here's his new effect. Once per turn, detach 1 Xyz material from this card to add 1 level 4 Orichalcos monster from your deck to your hand. When this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, special summon 1 gadget monster from your graveyard. So that's him. Next up, Orichalcos Dragon, who also got a revision as well. Once per turn, you can detach 2 Xyz materials from this card, add 1 Orichalcos card from your graveyard or deck to your hand, except the Seal of Orichalcos itself. So basically, I can still add Orichalcos cards, it's just I can't add the seal, which is okay. Next up, Chaos number 200, Orichalcos Dread Scythe. This is the second form of number 200. And I could only use him if I have Rank Up Magic Astral Force, but I am planning to add Rank Up Magic Astral Force's anime version into the deck. So even though I can't summon him at the moment, I can summon other Xyz monsters as well. But I do plan to also add Rank Up Magic Orichalcos Force alongside it too. So once per turn, I can attach 2 materials from this card to target 2 monsters my opponent controls. Attach them to this card as materials. This card gains 400 attack for each material attached to it. If this card would be destroyed, you can detach 1 material from this card instead. So that's what he does. Here is Dark Chaos number 200, Orichalcos Dreadmaster. So basically, he can only be summoned by Rank Up Magic Orichalcos Force. And once per turn, I can attach material from this card to activate one of the following effects. I can detach 1 material from this card to activate one of the following effects. I inflict 300 damage to my opponent times the number of materials on this card. I can target 3 monsters my opponent controls, attach them to this card as material. If this card would be destroyed, I can detach 1 material from this card instead. So that's his errata. Next up, Warlock of Orichalcos. Requires basically 2 level 4 Orichalcos spellcaster type monsters, which Shaman and Sorcerer are spellcasters. I can once per turn detach a material from this card to activate one of the following effects. I can discard one card my opponent controls. Not discard. Destroy one card my opponent controls. Or I can discard one random card from my opponent's hand to the graveyard. So essentially, I get a choice. Next up, Kirito. I can summon him from my hand by discarding a monster, and also, when this card is special summoned, I can draw one card, and when my opponent's monster clears an attack, I can discard a card to negate the attack. Next up, Orichalcos Smokedra. So Smokedra here requires 2 level 6 Orichalcos monsters. Shaman and Sorcerer does the trick with this too. While this card has Xyz materials, it is also a level 10 monster. Once per turn, you can detach one material from this card, special summon one Orichalcos monster from your graveyard. Face up, special summon monsters your opponent controls cannot activate their effects while this card has materials. Their effects are negated. You must control a face up the Seal of Orichalcos to resolve these cards' effects. And the last monster, Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. So basically, that is the Orichalcos deck profile for you guys. Once again, I apologize for the TV in the other room. Like I said, family members watching TV. My family is hoping to fix that problem real soon to where there's a bit more quietness in my videos. So, with that being said, once again, I will link Cal and Florentine and MCO40's channels in the description bar below. And a final shout out to Winter Moon. Thank you for the cards, buddy. You're one of my best friends, and I appreciate the custom card work that you do. And with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Expect the next Orichalcos revision to be after the Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2020. That's when my next revision is going to happen. I'm going to stick with this revision for a little while to test it out. Once again, if you all want to challenge this Orichalcos deck, hit me up on Discord. I'm not too hard to find. And with that being said, this is Yu-Gi-Oh! Master 88 saying see you later.